Folks, governor is not a good entry-level job, but that's what it would be for Terry.
Ken Cuccinelli last night at the first televised gubernatorial debate between he and his rival on the Democratic side, Terry McAuliffe. Joining us right now is David Sherfinski of the Washington Times. He was there. He took one for the team. He actually watched every word of it. David, thanks for joining us this morning. Was it a good debate?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, in many ways, it was a much more substantive debate than their first go-around in late July. It's tough to declare an actual winner. I think both candidates held their own and appeared to accomplish what they sort of set out to do beforehand. You know, going in, McAuliffe had to avoid any major stumbles and come off as perhaps a little flip, as he reportedly was in his recent candidate interview with the Northern Virginia Technology Council. Cuccinelli had to go in and show that he wasn't sort of the crusading culture warrior that McAuliffe is portraying him as, and use his knowledge of the issues, as that recent clip, or the clip you just played, indicated to his advantage.
Yeah, David, it looks like the shorthand version of how this is being reported this morning is Terry McAuliffe said Ken Cuccinelli's bad for Virginia because of his extreme conservative views, as Terry McAuliffe puts it. And Ken Cuccinelli says Terry McAuliffe's bad for Virginia because he's just inexperienced and he's never held elective office. Is that really the overriding message that we got, or was there more to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, both candidates sort of continued their lines of attack that they've used on one another, although Cuccinelli sort of recently has kind of adopted the line, well, and I think he realizes that what McAuliffe is sort of trying to do, so he's saying, well, you may not agree with me on everything, but at least you'll always know where I stand, unlike McAuliffe, who, like you said, doesn't have any experience in elected government. It's a little bit interesting because both campaigns are always harping on, well, this campaign is more than about just negative attacks and mudslinging. But then when they got nailed down on their actual proposals last night, they sort of declined to give specifics and said, well, if this doesn't happen, then I wouldn't necessarily pursue it. So to the undecided voter who might be out of work, it's kind of like, oh, when they talk about actual issues, they suddenly don't get so ambitious.
Yeah. In this debate, in the last few days, in this discussion and in this campaign, there has been some focus on what Terry McAuliffe might do with regards to guns. Did that come up last night, and how did he respond?
Yeah, that did come up last night. Well, he responded by saying, well, I support universal background checks, but I'm a hunter. Cuccinelli responded by saying, well, it's tough to say because you got an F rating from the NRA, and I've always been a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. It's tough to really.
But specifically, the concern about McAuliffe has been whether or not he might try to impose laws like we have seen imposed in the state of Maryland. Did he respond to that?
Well, no. I think McAuliffe stopped short of saying sort of actively, I will pursue this as governor. I think, as with a question on gay marriage that he stumbled a little bit on, I think both candidates realized that with an overwhelming Republican majority in the State House of Delegates, that it would probably be pretty hard to enact something like they did in Maryland in a state like Virginia, regardless of whether he says he wanted to or not.
David Sherfinski joins us. He's a political reporter for the Washington Times, talking about last night's gubernatorial debate. And you just mentioned Terry McAuliffe stumbling on something with regard to gay marriage. What was that exactly?
Well, it was a question of, he said, he's consistently said, well, I support same-sex marriage, but there's a constitutional ban in Virginia, and it doesn't appear as if anything could get through the House of Delegates twice and get to another vote or a referendum for a constitutional amendment. But the moderator, Chuck Todd, basically asked him, well, you're saying that if it won't get through the House of Delegates, so you won't do anything. Why aren't you going to lead on this issue? And he gave sort of a long answer and concluded with, well, if there was a bill before me, I'd sign it, which Cuccinelli immediately jumped on and said, well, if we're talking about a marriage equality amendment, it's not something the governor would have to sign. It would go to the voters.
Yeah.
And then afterward, McAuliffe sort of tried to clarify it and said he was talking in general terms, and that of course he knows that a governor wouldn't have to sign it, but it kind of underscored.
It sort of pointed out the fact that he really isn't completely aware of how the Virginia government works. The government that he wants to be the leader of, or at least the chief executive.
It kind of underscored, regardless of whether he tried to sort of walk it back, in the post-debate scrum, it sort of underscored Cuccinelli's point that, like you played in the opening clip, he said governor isn't really a great entry-level job to have, but it would be for Terry McAuliffe.
David, real fast, we got to get out of here, but I did a quick search of the transcript, and I didn't see any mention of coal or the EPA. McAuliffe hasn't commented on this very important issue to Virginians. Did it come up at all? Did Cuccinelli press him on the latest EPA regulations over coal in Virginia?
No, you're right.
Shocking.
That was very surprising. That was one issue, one major issue that didn't come up.
Not surprising that Chuck Todd would not bring it up, because that would certainly help Ken Cuccinelli. All right, David Sherfinski, thanks so much for joining us. We'll continue to watch your coverage in the Washington Times.